Now that I've got a lot of the rock work and castings done, I want to get the feeling of the riverbed. What I've done is collected a variety of shale rocks, and I put little ledges on the top edges here, glued them on, so I have a natural ledge on the top that the water will flood up against. That'll allow me to have a nice crisp edge on the front leading edge for waterfalls. And then I've just sprinkled some loose rock work from the collection that I picked up from the local quarry area, and not so much on the far end, but I've put in the rock work, just sprinkle the rock on the bottom just so that I have a bit of a texture. And I've got some nice shale pieces like this that the odd place will sit on a ledge, you know, and give a bit of a rock projection, which would be quite nice. And then now I could have painted all this ahead of time, but I'm going to try something a little different. So I put the rock work in first, and then I'll secure that with white glue and water. I've got some play sand here, and I'm just sprinkling the play sand over these rock areas. And what that's doing is it's covering some of the plaster that's exposed, and giving a little bit more fill, so I don't have as much of the casting resin to put in, and just sprinkling it liberally over the riverbed. And what I'll do after this is I'll put in some white glue and water, spray it over all of this, soak it down so that it secures it nice and hard, and then we'll start applying the casting resin over that. Of course, you know, I have sand over the rocks, which is not quite what I want. So what I'll do now is I'll just take a brush and just lightly brush the tops of these rocks so that the sand goes between the rocks as to sort of fill the base. So this way I'm not using so much casting resin as I am using just sand and real rock as fill. And so just gently brushing the tops of the rock. Now that I've finished applying all the loose rocks and gravel, I've sprinkled sand over the entire area and brushed it all in, leaving little edges, little outcroppings. And you can see I've used some ledge rock to give a sharp edge over the top of the waterfalls. See one there, and you can see at the bottom. So now we have a riverbed, and when I do the casting, I'll put a lot of dark color dye into the casting itself, so that the depth of the river will be darker, but not so dark that you can't see the rocks. Because of all the erosion that's going on with rock work, and the rock is breaking away in the river over the years, it's being washed down, so you're going to get a lot of rock in the bottom layers of the river. Eventually what that does, it gets washed and tumbles over, and washes and tumbles over, and it slowly moves downstream. I've taken a spray bottle, I've added a few drops of liquid detergent in there. What that does, it's a wetting agent. Nothing new to most of us so far. And I've taken another bottle and I've added white glue and water, so that will be the binder. So first what we'll do is just pre-wet everything. Do one area at a time. And you can do it with an eyedropper. I'd prefer to spray, because you get lots more glue into the sand and the rock as a binder. And then just spritz it that one more time, and that will sort of wash it all down into the bottom of each river area. Just soak it with white glue and water. Next little area, just after doing the base of the river, I've added some rock up underneath each of these little waterfall areas, because obviously rock is being carried down and tumbles over, and will typically build up the rock at the base of each of the cliff areas. As it tumbles down, you'll get rock, that has dropped down and builds just like any major waterfall. In preparation for the water that can be done from the casting resin, the first thing I'm going to do is install epoxy on the back edge of these cap rocks to ensure that there's no leakage, so that when I fill these areas they don't prematurely run through, because I want to control how much comes across in cascading. So I mix up some epoxy and I put it in behind these rocks, just to ensure that we don't get any runoff prematurely. Put it on fairly liberally. Now in this case I'm not using a 5-minute epoxy, which gives it some time to capillary down in underneath the rocks and any loose cavities and so on that might exist. So I'm just spreading it underneath the back edge of all these rocks, and it doesn't matter if any of it sort of gets on the top, simply because it's going to end up having a wet look anyway when we eventually pour some of the casting resin in here. After this is done, I'll be using some 5-minute epoxy to put on top of some of these cap rocks where I want the waterfall to actually spill over. That creates a bit of a dam for the waterfall.